Yes, I'm wondering if you could respond to the Muslim belief that Jesus actually wasn't crucified at all, that
Yes.
God made it appear to be the case, and therefore his resurrection appearances would not actually be resurrection appearances.
Yes. In my theological work at the University of Munich, although I wrote on the resurrection of Jesus, my side area of expertise on which I was examined was Islam. And I never dreamt that this would be something on which I would be speaking someday, but in the aftermath of 9/11 and our heightened awareness of Islam in the world, I've been called upon more and more to address these kinds of questions. And so I welcome this question as a very interesting one. In my dialogue with Muslim theologians, when I've had events on university campuses with them, this is one of the points that I press them very hard on. Because the crucifixion of Jesus is, in the words of Robert Funk, the founder of the Jesus Seminar, the one indisputable fact about Jesus of Nazareth that everybody recognizes. And so I find it ironic that of all the facts that the Quran or that Muhammad would have denied about Jesus would be the one indisputable fact that everybody recognizes about Jesus of Nazareth, namely that he was executed by crucifixion. And the reasons for that is that we have a multitude of sources, independent sources in the New Testament that attest to this. We have extra biblical sources in Tacitus and Josephus that attest to this. Also, it passes the criterion of embarrassment. That is to say, it is something that the early church would never have invented for its would-be Messiah, had it not in fact been true. It was something the early church had to overcome rather than invent. So there are very, very good grounds historically for believing that Jesus was executed by Roman crucifixion. And yet the Quran denies this without a shred of historical ground for doing so. The Quran was written by a man 600 years after the event who had no independent source of historical information about Jesus of Nazareth, who simply received and codified in the Quran tales of Jesus that were found in the apocryphal Gospels, like the infancy Gospel of Thomas, as well as in the New Testament, or that were just circulated in the Arabian Peninsula. And so the Quran contains at its heart an egregious historical error, namely that Jesus of Nazareth was not crucified. And in my debates with Muslim theologians on this, perhaps the most interesting response that I've received so far was the claim by Shabir Ali, who is a Canadian Muslim apologist. He is willing to agree that Jesus was in fact crucified, which really compromises the Quran, because the Quran says they did not crucify him. But Ali is willing to grant that he was crucified, but he says he wasn't actually killed. Ali subscribes to the apparent death theory, and he thinks that they took him down alive from the cross, placed him in the tomb, and before he could die in the tomb, Allah assumed him into heaven. So he will go, like 90% of the way toward the Christian view, but then at the last minute, he has this sort of body-snatching view of Jesus where God takes him away. I pointed out to Shabir in the debate that what this means is that Allah then deceived 1/3 of the world's population by foisting Christianity upon the world, by snatching away the body of Jesus so the disciples would find the empty tomb, see these appearances and think he's risen from the dead, and thereby Allah has deceived most of the world into believing in Christianity, which is surely implausible. And he didn't have a good response to that. So I think this is a really major problem for the Quran, is its historical portrait of Jesus is so fundamentally at its heart inaccurate.